Welcome back for another episode of the Even Year Dynasty Show. My name's Cody. I'm your host. Today it is Thanksgiving Eve. It is Wednesday night. We are going to just get this episode out today. We're going to do some hot stove rumors for the San Francisco Giants and talk about the one piece of minor news that they have right now. And then I'm not going to be recording the next 2 days, so unless barring any kind of surprise and any big things happening for them, plan is to record again on Saturday. We're going to take the holiday off and start off with the first piece of minor news. Giants signed outfielder Yusniel Diaz, former Dodgers top prospect. He's kind of well beyond his top prospect days at this point. He still has some potential, but he did spend last year only in Double-A, hit 278 with 16 home runs, which, in the Eastern League, that's quality numbers, but he was probably one of the older players in that league. And, I wouldn't expect much out of him. It's a minor league deal, so no 40-man spot or anything like that. So probably not gonna really end up amounting to much, but it's depth, and it doesn't cost them really much anything to do it. So that's the one minor piece of news so far. We're gonna kind of go through some of the different topics or different rumors that are out there. First thing is to start with Shohei Ohtani, who's going to always be the number one topic on all of these. Not really anything new going on there. Still, the only thing that's really come out is that Seattle is probably not going to be pursuing him, which I always kind of questioned the legitimacy of, whether or not they could financially pull that off. You're talking about a kind of a mid-market team that their payroll's sitting around 140 million. I mean, Seattle is a big growing city, and I think they could push their payroll a little bit more, but I just never thought that was something that their owner would ever, really seriously consider. They Outside of that, there hasn't really been much news. I know they were talking to Ken Rosenthal today on Foul Territory. He mentioned that uh, there's just not really any idea on what kind of timeline he might be operating on. I know Morosi kind of speculated earlier in the offseason that maybe he would sign within or by the winter meetings. Um, I wouldn't anticipate that. I mean, the winter meetings, a lot can happen. So, maybe, but I have a feeling that it's going to be kind of a slow moving thing for him. I'm hoping that he gets it out of the way early though, just because it's going to hold up a lot of teams. Now that actually could work to the Giants' advantage, seeing as they're one of the few teams that can afford multiple big players right now. So, if other teams are holding up and waiting out Ohtani, and if another player is willing to move quicker, it could work to the Giants' advantage in that case. But nothing really there. Yoshinobu Yamamoto got posted on this past Monday on November 20th, opening up his 45-day window to sign with a major league team. Otherwise, he would end up returning back to Japan, which I don't, that almost never happens. So his 45-day window opened up. He has to sign by 2 p.m. on January 4th. So there's now kind of the clock is now ticking on him. I read that 11 to 14 teams reached out to him. A guy that's 25 years old with his kind of pedigree in Japan and his talent, it's not surprising. Everybody's going to check in on him. The reality is, I think probably only 5 teams around the league probably could actually afford what the kind of contract he's going to demand. I think you're looking at essentially the Giants and Dodgers, the 2 New York teams. Yankees definitely want more pitching. Mets are always going to be in on guys like that, especially with Steve Cohen and his pocketbook. And it sounds like the Cubs are really in on him. So I think it's going to come down to probably those 5 teams in the end. We'll see kind of what that number ends up being. I think easily he gets over 200 million. I've heard as much as like now they're talking about 250. Who knows? I mean, I've said in the past that if the Giants could get him on, if you told me today that the Giants could have him on an 8-year, $240 million deal, I would do that in a heartbeat. I mean, it's a big risk and it's a big swing, but he's 25 years old, and an 8-year deal, you'd be taking his ages 25 through 32 seasons. You'd basically buy out his entire prime, which that is such a rarity with a long-term deal for anybody. So, we'll see what kind of, I know I'm not the only one that thinks that way. And I know there's executives on other teams that are going to think the same thing. So we'll see kind of what that number ends up looking like. One thing that came out today with him is that he is open to playing with other Japanese stars. This is kind of a topic of debate with the whole, whether or not Japanese players will play with other Japanese stars. There's always been this kind of perception that they, and I don't know how much truth there is to this. Some people seem to think there's more truth than others, but there's this perception out there that they will, a lot of times they want to play on their own team. And part of it is like, I've heard it's like an honor system where they want to let the other Japanese stars shine in their own market, which if that's true, that would theoretically rule out teams like the Mets and the Cubs who already have their own Japanese stars currently playing for them. But, I don't know the level of truth to that if there's, if they're really wanting to not play with them. But it did come out that Yamamoto is open to that. So naturally, Jon Heyman, who every Giants fans' favorite reporter, came out and speculated that, well, the Dodgers are the one team that could reasonably afford both, Ohtani and Yoshinobu Yamamoto, which, quite frankly, for lack of a nicer way of putting it, is a load of crap. The Giants, whether or not Greg Johnson wants everyone to think this, or if anybody really wants to admit it, the national media, God knows, they never seem to figure this out. The Giants right now could 100% easily afford both players. It's not, it's not like their payroll would go out of control, because the reality is, if I'm going to overestimate here, they could sign Ohtani to $55 million a year and Yamamoto to $35 million a year. That is $90 million even. That would bring their current payroll towards the luxury tax is $164 million. That would put their payroll up to $254 million, which is $17 million over the competitive balance tax. Which, mind you, Greg Johnson already said they're willing to go over, quote, depending on the player, and only for probably a year. Well, the reality is they could do that and then turn around and flip guys like J.D. Davis, Mike Yastrzemski, Austin Slater. They can move some of these guys if they really want to clear some space. Maybe they get someone to take Conforto. Maybe they have to eat $5 million of his deal and move him. There's ways they could get themselves back under, or they might decide, hey, we're going to be over the tax for a year, because guess what? In next offseason, they have, as I talked about in the last couple times, they have like $70 million coming off the books in the next offseason. So no matter what they do today, this year, they have so much financial flexibility going forward that they can bite the bullet financially for a year. And let's be real, if you signed to Shohei Ohtani, you are going to make all of that money back and some. So it's not like they could not afford to do this. That said, this is not a prediction by any stretch. I don't anticipate that happening. It's just Heyman talking out his rear end. So that is kind of interesting. It would be something to monitor if they potentially got in, maybe they get one. If they get lucky, they get one of them. Maybe the other might follow. We'll see. We'll see where the chips fall on that one. Some other news: Jung-Hoo Lee should be posted here in the coming days, is kind of what I've been reading. I think obviously the Giants are going to be really high on him. I've seen projections. A lot of people seem to project about a 5-year deal is probably what's going to come his way. I've seen anything from 5 years, $50 million to 5 years, 100 million. So, the range there is pretty large. Playing in the KBO, they kind of compare it to like double A, kind of a mixture of double and triple A as far as talent goes. Now he has like truly dominated that level of or that league. So we'll see kind of what he ends up getting. It is a really difficult projection coming from the KBO. I think you kind of you can't really look at the numbers as well as kind of you almost have to like eye test it or I do the eye scouting report. What I see with him is elite contact skills, great defender, has plus speed. So I think he's a guy that would fit Oracle Park well, mostly because as a left-handed hitter, his game is not built on power. He had 1 year he hit, I think, 23 homers there, but most years he's single-digit home runs. But with his speed and how large Oracle Park is, and his contact skills, I could see him being a guy that wears out line to line, the gaps, hits it's hard to project it, but maybe he hits 270 to 300 and he barely strikes out. I mean, he had more career walks and strikeouts over in the KBO. I think best case you're looking at like a elite defensive center fielder plus an elite leadoff hitter. But it's a different level of competition. So I think even if they do sign him, you're gonna have to be patient with him. But obviously, the Giants have huge interest in him, given their actions and kind of what they've said. I think that's pretty apparent. So we'll see. His 45-day window will open up once he gets posted, which will hopefully be in the next few days. Get that rolling. Matt Chapman rumors, those have been out for a while that they're interested in him. I mean, I had a whole episode in my last episode that I don't think that's the route they should go, but I don't make those decisions unless they want to start paying me. One thing to keep in mind, it's actually funny. The one team that I actually specifically mentioned would be what I thought would be a good fit for Matt Chapman was the Arizona Diamondbacks, but you can go ahead and cross them off. They just traded for Eugenio Suarez today from the Seattle Mariners. The Mariners, you would actually think that because it saves them $11 million, kind of it flips to them that they might be a natural fit, but the plan sounds like they're going to try and, they're intending on starting Luis Urias. So it's funny, you look around the league and the best fits for Matt Chapman are probably the Giants and the Blue Jays. I mean, those are the best fits for him. I don't really see the Giants. I don't think he's the best option for them. But if anybody's looking for my reasoning on that, check out my last episode. The one other name that I kind of heard in trade rumors, actually a couple of them, are Bo Bichette got mentioned to the Cubs earlier, which kind of got, it's not a hard rumor. It was just kind of they were talking about the possibility of them trading for him. If Bo Bichette is truly available, I would say the Giants, and I would imagine that Farhan would jump right in on that, hopefully, and get in talks on that. That's a guy that he just finished his age 25 season, so he's going into his age 26 season, has 2 more years under contract, making $11 million next year, 16.5 the following year. So he's cheap, relatively cheap financially for the next couple of years. So he wouldn't really prevent you from even making 2 big moves if you really wanted to. But that's a guy that I think he's one of the better pure hitters around baseball. Every year of his career, he has had between a 120 and a 143 WRC plus. So meaning he's been between 20 and 43% better than league average offensively. Pretty minuscule walk rate. It's like 5% for his career, but his strikeout rate is 20%, which is better than league average. Very reasonable, especially in today's game. His power numbers have increased the last 3 years. 2021, he hit 29 home runs. Then he hit 24 in 22, and then 20 last year. So, doesn't have a huge on base percentage because that walk rate's pretty low, but Still a highly productive player. Has had a couple very good years driving in runs, although I think RBIs are kind of an overrated statistic. I care more about, batting average with runners in scoring position. And, honestly, I care more about like how often do you get a guy in from third with less than 2 outs. Those are the things that I care about. The counting statistic of RBIs is overrated in today's game just because it's so much of it is opportunity based. So, but that's a name to monitor. What it would take to get him, probably, you're looking at like kind of the Juan Soto deal, 2 top 100 prospects, a couple more really good ones in your system. I wouldn't be shocked if something like Marco Luciano and Carson Whisenhunt plus, I don't know, Averson Arteaga and Reggie Crawford is kind of the names I tweeted out earlier. That'd be maybe a package that could get it done if the Blue Jays are looking to trade him, which I don't know why they would be. I would think they'd be trying to sign him to an extension. I feel like he's honestly possibly the best player on their team. But, if they're willing to, if they're looking to deal him, I would think that would be an awesome pickup for the Giants. Average defender, not going to steal a ton of bags. I think he had one year where he actually stole like 20 bags, but every other year it's been single digits. So main thing you're getting him for would be his bat, but he's got a sweet one, so would be fun. The other name, Juan Soto, that keeps getting thrown around. I don't see how that is a fit on basically any level as far as trade with the Padres. And when I say this, I mean, he would be actually a perfect player in Oracle Park. Probably as a DH, his corner outfield, he's not a good defender. But as a hitter, kind of as I brought up with the Ohtani video, is as a hitter, he's got power, foul pole to foul pole. So that's the kind of left-handed hitter that you need to be in order to hit 30 plus homers a year in Oracle Park. I think he's a phenomenal fit on the team. That said, he's a guy they're probably going to need to just go after in free agency because I don't see how it fits for the Giants or for the Padres to make this deal. And when I say this is because if you're looking at it from the Padres perspective, why would you send Juan Soto to a division rival where if he signs an extension with them, he could terrorize your team for the next decade or more? So it doesn't make sense there because that would mean you facilitated that happening. Now, on the flip side, it doesn't make sense for the Giants because nothing that Juan Soto has done so far has indicated that he is willing to sign an extension. Obviously, he turned down the massive extension offer from the Nationals. I don't know for sure if the Padres have been trying to get him to sign an extension. I can't imagine they haven't tried to get him to sign an extension. I know Juan Soto cared about his privacy and not letting the extensions turn public. That's part of what soured the whole Nationals thing, is that they turned it public and it pretty much offended him. So I would think that the Padres have tried to keep things more under wraps. But the reality is, like, he's a year from free agency and he's got Scott Boras as an agent. Nothing he's done has indicated that he is looking to sign an extension. So if you're the Giants, you're going to end up trading 2 top 100 prospects, some other quality prospects. It's going to take 3 or 4 quality prospects to get Juan Soto, because the thing is the Padres aren't going to trade him within the division for less than they could get elsewhere. Like, they're going to gouge the Giants in order to trade him within the division. Superstars don't get traded within the division for a reason. So it doesn't make sense for the Giants because you're getting a guy that's a massive flight risk and then, gutting your system in order to get him. And then if he leaves in a year, and then let's say the Padres end up, you send Kyle Harrison or you send Marco Luciano and the other guy, Luis Matos or Carson Whisenhunt, you're sending like 2 of these top end prospects. And if they hit on a couple of those guys, it's a double whammy for the Giants. Like, you crushed your future and you propped up the Padres in the process. So it truly does not make sense for either team, in my opinion, for that trade to take place. I won't say it's impossible. The logic is not there for me. The last rumor that I've kind of seen is that the Giants right now are listed as co-favorites for Cody Bellinger, who I personally really like the fit. A lot of people are not as high on him playing in Oracle Park as I am. I've actually pulled up the Baseball Savant Statcast. I will add that image in here. He hit 26 home runs last year in 130 games. Looking at that, the spray chart there, it actually almost all of them would have left the yard in Oracle. I think there was like one or two that might not have. And granted, this doesn't factor in wins and everything like that. There's a couple of the right field wall that maybe it gets hung up in the wind and ends up short. The data says it clears, but it's hard to tell. Cold night game with wind blowing in, it probably comes up short. But a couple that would have also left the yard according to that data. And reality is, Chicago gets pretty windy. Last I checked, I'm sure there's plenty of games where he tattooed a ball there and the wind was blowing in and it just died in the outfield. So Bellinger, they're listed as co-favorites right now. Heyman mentioned that the Yankees are kind of split within the organization on Cody Bellinger, talking about his hard hit rate and his barrel percentage, which, I will, to Heyman's credit, he brought up a good point. And I kind of mentioned this one of the first episodes where, yeah, his hard hit percentage went down, but you look at his strikeout percentage, and his strikeout percentage dropped to 15% last year, which it had been closer to 30 most years of his career, in the mid to high 20s, 30% range. So, and Heyman brought up that he hit 280 with 2 strikes last year. Well, if you're hitting 280 with 2 strikes, especially now that they've banned the shift, that sounds to me a heck of a lot more like you're just trying to get bat on ball and make good things happen with 2 strikes. And he was probably, maybe flipping a few balls into the outfield, which is going to kill your average exit velocity and your barrel percentage and all that stuff, and your hard hit percentage. So there are a lot of numbers that I think could be reasonably explained with him. If the Yankees kind of exit that bidding, I don't think they're going to exit it, but if the Yankees aren't as high on him and not willing to go as high, I think he is certainly a very attainable player for the Giants. We'll see if he has reservations playing in Oracle Park. Maybe that ends up factoring in, but he is definitely a middle of the order presence that I think will be very attainable for them. But other than that, if there's anything that I didn't cover today, that any rumors out there that I missed, anything you guys want me to talk about, drop a comment, ask it a question in the comments. Otherwise, hope everybody has a happy Thanksgiving and watch some football. We got the 49er game tomorrow against the Seahawks. Hopefully they take care of business there. Hope everybody has a great Thanksgiving, though. Get a lot of food. Enjoy some football. We'll catch you all on Saturday. All right. Bye, everyone.